Myself back in Iraq, 2004, 2005. In particular, a patrol that I had the opportunity to go on with Charlie Platoon, 123 Marines. We headed out about, dark 30 as usual. It's probably 4:30 in the morning. We all got together in 7-ton trucks and headed on to the city of Heet, spelled H-I-T, pronounced Heat, Iraq. It was about a, 8-10 mile trip into the city. And we were going to enter, spend about 6 hours, and egress out of the city back into our 7 tons and head on back to the FOB. As far as why we were going there, all I knew was we were going to take some pictures and gather some intelligence. As far as my part, I'm a corpsman, so I'm just there to provide medical support for the guys. We arrived there, it's dark, and we get into a typical file formation where we got one file on one side and the other file on the other side. In this case, we're all spaced apart about, 10 meters, 30 feet or so, walking down each side of the street. We are on city streets, uneventful, quiet, kind of foggy, and not really light out yet. Unpaved road, it's dusty dirt. Businesses are on each side of the street. Typically, their business is their residence as well. So they'll have what looks like kind of a gated garage there out front. And then you can see behind it, there's a multi-story building, a 2-story building, and that's where they live in the back. In this case, I'm in one of the files. I'm on the right-hand side. There's a radio guy either behind me and sergeants in front of me or vice versa. I'm carrying an M16 and a 9mm on my leg. I've got a fanny pack that's full of medical equipment, bandages, etc. I'm typically carrying about 4 IV bags, and as spoiled as us corpsmen are, I'll ask one of the Marines to carry my IV bags for me. I'm spoiled as far as loads go. Now, as far as their loads, I was bowing to them on more than one occasion, realizing that they're carrying 60, 80, even 100-pound loads. For instance, the M245 Golf machine gun, you Marines know how much that thing weighs, but that included with the amount of rounds that they carry on them, they're carrying an incredible amount of weight. In this instance, I'm with the 123 Marines out of Houston, Texas, and there's many Hispanic guys. So their build is about, 5'6", and they weigh maybe a $145, 145 pounds, if that. And they're in the most incredible shape that I have seen from a medical standpoint. They got a resting heart rate of 45 and mine's 60 to 80. And they're perfusing just fine. In other words, they look pink, they're wide awake, they're a normal functioning Marine with a heart rate of 45. Dogs are barking in the morning. The kind of constant drone of Islamic prayers are coming out of the speakers from the mosques or the big tall brick towers that they have constructed, and they got the speakers at the top of them, and seems like it's being broadcast perpetually throughout the day. There's other platoons with us. I think we had 3 platoons: Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie platoon. So we're dispersed through the city. Alpha platoon is in a different location, Bravo's in another, and we're in another. So that's kind of the setting. We've typically got an interpreter with us. In this instance, I've got one of our interpreters. His name's Safwan. Safwan's an ex-Iraqi pilot, no longer a pilot in the Iraqi Air Force, and now hired as an interpreter for us. Just to describe Safwan a little bit, I'll actually read from a after action that I wrote when I got back from Iraq in 2005. Safwan is a colonel and former pilot in the Iraqi Air Force. He stands a good 6 feet 1 inch in height with his dark eyebrows and gray flecked mustache, giving him kind of that Tom Selleck appearance. He has a love for women that can be immediately noticed when you walk into his bedroom back at the FOB. and witness the collage of pictures that he has wallpapering his walls and his ceiling as well. I won't tell you what magazine he got those pictures from, but I think you can read between the lines. I used to go to his hooch religiously every night about 8:30, and we would have tea and coffee with the two interpreters, Ali and Safwan, and as well as the OFW workers, the overseas foreign workers. One guy was from Albania, the other from Yugoslavia. We'd all gather together and have coffee, tea, and eat munchies and tell stories. The odor of his favorite cologne surrounded him. Every time you walked into his room, you know, you always knew Safwan was near just by the scent of his cologne. Although he is of the Muslim faith, he has a fascination with Christmas and all that it stands for. His birthday falls on December 25th. True story as well. Maybe that's why. Ever since his childhood, anticipates the arrival of Christmas and puts together his own Christmas tree. He collects songs and carols that are heard during that time of year and loves other classic American things such as music. John Denver in particular, he enjoys. The song Country Road is a favorite of his. He says, "This is what I dream of when I imagine America," he tells me. Safwan carries his meticulous kept Kalashnikov with him on all his assignments. So we're walking down the road. All of a sudden, you could kind of hear that distant rumble, you know, and we all stop. We're kind of, you know, wondering where it's coming from. And within an instant, this, I mean, tremendous roar over our heads and crack of the sound barrier just, it lights up the early morning, and we are on our faces without even realizing how we got. This F-15 comes screaming over us. You know, it seemed like ground level, put us to our faces. As I raise my eyes up into the sky, I see this jet screaming into the distance, and all of a sudden these bright orange flares start just popping, you know, from its sides, and it veers off in, you know, an awesome display that morning. And wondering what in the world was that all about. I remember saying to one of the Marines, you know, what are we doing here? You know, what is the reason for us being here? And the one Marine said, "Don't you know, Doc, we're here to flush out the bad guys." And I thought, huh? As we're walking further down the street, a distant burst of gunfire erupts in the back, not from our platoon, but from somewhere else. I hear Sarge's earpiece come alive. Come to find out, some Iraqi kids were in a car and got into their vehicle and drove down the road at a high speed, and it was coming directly at one of the platoons, and it wasn't stopping, so they opened up on the car to stop it, and apparently they stopped it, but it was able to turn around and boogie out of there. I'm hearing, you know, "Let's go, Doc, let's go." Everybody kind of just run walking, and we're not too far from our egress where the 7 tons are going to pick us up at. So we're starting to kind of, you know, we're picking up the pace. I remember seeing the 7 tons in the distance, so it's like, you know, okay, we're almost home, when I hear my name again. I'm looking around trying to figure out where that's coming from, and I look to my right and I see two silhouettes in the distance, and I see him, you know, waving, and the voice comes out again, and then so I realize, okay, that's who's calling my name. I get off the street, I start walking in that direction, and it turns out to be a fellow corpsman, and he's got the Marine's arm around his shoulder, and he's kind of hobbling and limping, and he's like, help me out, and it turns out to be First Sergeant Hoover. To detail how I became friends with First Sergeant Hoover back at the FOB, but I recognize him. And he says, give me a hand. And First Sergeant's hurt. So I get around the other shoulder, and we're helping First Sarge down the street, that last push to get out of the city. And then we eventually get to the 7 tons, and we help First Sergeant into the back of the 7 ton. Corpsman and I are attending to First Sergeant. Ends up not sure what hit him or how he got injured, but he's got a laceration on his shoulder. It's pretty impressive, you know, full thickness laceration to the back of his scapula, and another open laceration to his right calf, his lower leg. So I'm wrapping the lower leg, and the other corpsman's got his shoulder. So we get in the back of the 7-ton, and I'm attending pretty directly to First Sergeant. I'm sitting or kneeling right there in front of him, and I'm trying to keep him warm at the same time. Now we got 45-mile-an-hour winds, blowing over us, and it's butt cold. First thing that pops in my mind is, body to body and keep him warm. So I said to First Sergeant, I said, nothing personal, First Sarge, and I wrapped my arms underneath his armpits, and I gave him a big bear hug, and I put my body as close as I could to him. And he said, Doc, if you won't tell my wife, I won't. And so we had a little chuckle, screaming down the highway, while he was injured. We're heading down the road. Next thing you know, we pull over. And apparently they had already made arrangements to transfer First Sergeant into a Humvee, and they were going to take him to the FOB in the Humvee as opposed to staying with us in the 7-ton. Later, they had arranged a helicopter transport to wherever they were going to take First Sergeant for further treatment. My senior corpsman was a younger Filipino guy, HM2 Alonso. He asked me if he could carry First Sergeant out to the helicopter. For whatever reason, he wanted to do that, and he asked me if he could do that. I was actually assigned that task, but in the civilian world, I had plenty of opportunities to call helicopters and arrange helicopter transport. I was more than willing to let Doc Alonso experience that. And he handed me his little digital camera that he had and asked me if I could take some pictures for him. So I said, sure, not a problem. I didn't realize, but somebody was on a rooftop videoing us of the helicopter coming in and landing, and us taking First Sergeant out to the helicopter, and me kneeling into the dirt with his camera and taking pictures from a distance. So there I am on the far left, kneeling down. Doc Alonso and others are carrying First Sergeant into the helicopter. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care, as you were.